there are in fact really two strains of these so-called transnationalists. On the one hand, you have, as we've been hearing about, those who believe that the world should be run by a secular, supranational form of government, the United Nations or various entities that sort of are subordinate to it. There is, however, also another community of transnationalists, not secular in nature. They believe the world should be run by a caliphate, imposing by force Sharia law. This is the term that authoritative Islam uses to describe the program all, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, must submit to. What is peculiar in the extreme, and again, mostly undiscerned by those who will be most directly affected by this program, is the common cause being made by these camps, which seemingly have very little in common. I mean, the people who are going to suffer particularly under a caliphate, I would submit to you, are the sort of addled leftists who are going to have, their kind of international government run the world. That won't happen. But what they have in common, absolutely, unmistakably, is a recognition that the impediment to the realization of their respective agendas is the American nation, the powerful American nation, the American nation whose power is rooted in its Constitution and the institutions that flow from it, and the liberties that flow from it. Now, there are various examples of places where these groups are making common cause to move forward on this shared agenda. Time won't permit going into any detail on most of them, but let me just emphasize one, which is particularly worrying, because I think if it's successful, most other things fall into place for, at the very least, the religious or Islamist transnationalists. The organization of the Islamic Conference, as Tom mentions, is a 57 majority Muslim nation bloc that has become the most powerful today in the United Nations. They have been championing for years a resolution in the Human Rights Council that essentially would impose Sharia blasphemy laws. That is to say, nothing may be said, no videos, no speeches, no books that offend Islam. Last year in the Human Rights Council, this resolution was adopted. And today, a man who may well be, with the fall of the Dutch government, the next prime minister of the Netherlands, is on trial facing criminal punishments consistent with this resolution in the Human Rights Council, which not only prohibits speech that offends Islam, but that imposes criminal penalties upon it. A woman who was here, you may have seen her in the panel yesterday, Elizabeth Savage Wolfe, very courageous woman, is facing similar kind of prosecution in her country, Austria. Well, we may say to ourselves, well, that can't happen here. We have the First Amendment, right? The Obama administration co-sponsored this organization of the Islamic Conference resolution prohibiting the blaspheming of Islam. And could this create pressure on us to adopt a similar kind of stance to that in the Netherlands, that in Austria, that in Europe? That indeed that the OIC, the Human Rights Council, the UN, the secular transnationalists all believe now should be imposed worldwide? I don't know, but here's a couple of things to think about. Last year, as you probably are aware, hate crimes were prohibited by the United States Congress, signed into law by the President. What makes a hate crime? A hate crime is something that is preceded by hate speech, because otherwise it's just a crime. So you get very rapidly into, in the first instance, the prohibition in this country now applies to homosexuals, but it's really not that far a step to say, well, you can't engage in speech that gives rise to possible threats of violence against Muslims either. I believe we're rather far down this road already. As Rick Santorum mentioned this morning, the Fort Hood massacre after-action report in 86 pages could not mention once the word Islam, or Muslim, or Sharia, or Muslim Brotherhood, or Islamic terrorism, or even violent extremism, the favored euphemism. Similarly, the Quadrennial Defense Review of the Defense Department and the Homeland Security Department, not mentioned. This silencing of our understanding of, our awareness of, the threat posed by Sharia in this country, not just elsewhere, but in this country, is part of the Muslim Brotherhood agenda. It is designed to open the door for our submission. And I must tell you, I find deeply troubling that the President has just appointed as our special representative, special envoy, to this same organization of the Islamic Conference, a man who looks to me like a Muslim brother, a Hafiz, as he says, one who has subjected himself to memorizing the entire Quran. That's a telltale that this is a guy who embraces Sharia. And I will wager you, we will see this government under increasing pressure to accommodate itself to the agenda of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, and we must not let that happen. In closing, this is an incredibly important moment for those of us who understand what's at stake with our sovereignty. And sadly, it is not only under assault from those who have this secular lunatic agenda. It is very much under assault from those who embrace this for religious reasons, specifically of the Sharia variety. A call to arms. We here at CPAC must stand for the Constitution, for representative and accountable government. And if we do, we will stave off these threats to our sovereignty. Thank you.